Hi there, Ayurveda Everyday with Talia family. So, I've had several questions lately about the six tastes of Ayurveda. And you can read about the six tastes of Ayurveda in pretty much any Ayurvedic cookbook. And like, I've got a book called the Ayurveda Encyclopedia, and there's all different references to it. But there's a difference between reading about the doshas and the six tastes of Ayurveda, all the concepts of Ayurveda, and then actually hearing them explained by a teacher. And I was working with one of my favorite clients, Barbara, and she was like, "It's so helpful to have you explain this." So I said, "Okay, well, I'm going to do this for my whole community." So, the six tastes of Ayurveda are sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, and astringent. They're always those six tastes. Every dosha, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, are balanced by three of those tastes, and they are imbalanced by the other three. So, the reason why I think this is so important and what I want you to grasp out of this video is we use the different tastes of food, herbs, spices, drinks to balance whatever's happening for us personally in the moment. We are always thinking about our core constitution, which is your dosha. Like if somebody asks you, "Hey, what's your dosha?" My hope is that your answer to them is your core constitution, not your present imbalance. So, for example, for my client Barbara, her imbalance is often vata, but her dosha is pitta vata. So, okay, but she needs to be thinking at every time she sits down to eat, like, how am I feeling and what do I need? And that's how we use these six tastes to kind of meet that question of what do I need right now based on how I feel. So I hope this makes sense what I'm about to say. Okay, so let's talk about the taste of sweet first. Sweet is comprised of earth and water. So it's made up of the same elements of nature that make up the kapha dosha. Therefore, sweet is kapha or kaphic. And sweet is not just about sugar in Ayurveda, it's actually found in pretty much all macronutrient foods. So fats are sweet, um, nuts, whole grains, dairy, animal protein, root vegetables. I feel like there's one thing I'm forgetting to say, but anyway, this will soon be in print, and so you'll be able to read it too. Um, and the taste of sweet is about building energy. It's about giving you energy from that earthy, wet, stable, dense, thick, juicy, slow place that is kapha, right? That is earth and water together. So we eat sweet when we want comfort, and we need grounding, and we're just trying to bring everything down. So if you have a vata imbalance, for example, or even a pitta imbalance that just has you like, you're just in all of this frenetic kinetic energy and you're like, oh my God, I can't stop, like my mind or even your body, the sweet taste is really going to anchor you and ground you. However, sometimes we crave sweet when we're really thirsty. And it makes sense because water is part of this constitution of sweet. But make sure that if you're really craving sweet and the kind of sugar, oh, that's the one I forgot, is sweet also represents sweeteners, not white sugar, but maple syrup, raw honey. So it's an umbrella, right? The taste of sweet is encompassing all these macronutrients, and then inside of those categories, like for sweeteners, fruits, root vegetables, there are the nuances. For example, if I cook a carrot or a beet, that is a very sweet root. That is a kapha plus sweet taste root. If I um, if I gently steam a rutabaga or a turnip, now because the essence of that root is more pungent and astringent, it's not a strictly sweet root. So if I'm, for example, a kapha predominant person, or I have a kapha imbalance, but I really need grounding and anchoring, and I need energy, I'd be best suited with a root vegetable that has some other components taste wise than just sweet. So I would recommend to a kapha predominant person, when you want root vegetables, make sure you throw in one or two that has also some pungent and astringent taste to it, like a rutabaga, a turnip. What's another one? It's escaping me right now. Even ginger, onion, leek, garlic, all of that. So the sweet taste is about so much more than sugar in Ayurveda. And that's really important to think about, because sweet balances vata and pitta. The only dosha that it imbalances is kapha, because it's the same thing as kapha. So it's going to create more kapha. That being said, right, we really want to expand our mind and be like, oh, like sweet is a really important taste, and it's okay for me to crave it. I just want to give myself a really good version of what the sweet taste is. And Ayurveda offers this whole array of the sweet taste that's amazing: avocado, brown rice, um, a baked sweet potato, ghee. I could make my whole meal be this like kapha sweet grounding meal, which I actually like to do a lot in the at the end of the day, because it helps me wind down my day and move towards good sleep. Okay, so that's the taste of sweet. Then there's the taste of sour, and sour is only technically balances vata because it's very wet and warm. So pitta is also wet and warm. It's hot and wet, fire and water. Kapha is very wet. But what I feel like with sour, and sour goes a little bit goes a very long way. So if you've ever put raw sauerkraut with your meal, for example, which is my favorite way to incorporate sour into kind of everyday. Somebody who tends towards loose stool, like a pitta predominant person, if they eat too much raw sauerkraut, they'll just like be like running to the bathroom within, sometimes 10, 30 minutes of their meal. Whereas somebody with slower digestion, slower metabolism, a vata or a kapha person, may be like, oh my God, that just helped me have a great bowel movement. But they weren't running to the bathroom. It just helped, because sour taste liquefies and encourages elimination. So it's going to liquefy anything that's dry, anything that's stuck. Around this time of year, the junction between winter and spring is actually my favorite time to recommend the taste of sour to people who are kapha, because we're kind of in the heart of the kapha seasons right now. But if there's any kapha gunk or sludge that's just kind of gotten built up, just a little bit of sour can really put it on the move. And then everything for kapha is about momentum. So once you really get stuff on the move for kapha, it's just so much easier for everything else to flow. So sour can be used in these really cool ways, like little tiny bits as needed. And we can get more into that another time. This is just a little overview of the six tastes. Then there's salty. Now, salt technically is only balancing to vata again. So vata is balanced by sweet, sour, and salty. The reason why salt balances vata so well is because it's moist, it has weight to it, and it's warming. So if you ever make, I'm always recommending Soleil, the saltwater concentrate that I learned how to make from my teacher, Deanna Batdorf. And it has been one of the absolute most healing tools in my toolbox. So many of you have told me that it has changed your entire life in terms of like putting it into your morning drink, even if you add it to your hot water with lemon, because it's so deeply hydrating. Water follows salt. And what dosha needs water more than anybody else is vata. Vata is dry, cold, light, subtle. It's made from air and ether, whereas pitta is born from water and fire. Kapha is born from water and earth. They don't need as much of these wet, hydrating um, tools. However, as a culture, as a society, and I mean a global society, we are in a vata imbalance, just traveling a lot, doing way too much, not sleeping enough, so many people to communicate with, so much technology, so much EMF influence that pretty much everybody's dehydrated these days. I mean, not everyone, but in my practice, I would say that probably 90 to 95% of the clients that I see have a profound level of dehydration. And it just makes sense for what's going on in our world right now and how our world works these days. So I do, a little bit of salt goes a long way. And when we say that a taste imbalances the other doshas, it doesn't mean that you should completely avoid that taste. In fact, Ayurveda recommends that you have a little bit of each of the six tastes in your day, every day, because the way I explain this to my client is it's like the human body is very complex. Ayurveda on paper is simplified. Here's what's vata, here's what's pitta, here's what's kapha. This is sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, astringent. It's like it all makes sense. It all fits into a box on paper. But in the human body, it's much more complicated than that. We're constantly influenced by outside sources. We're constantly influenced by our quality of sleep, our quality of relationships, our stress levels, what we ate, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so many things. And we can start to have little imbalances arising without us being totally aware of it. So Ayurveda recommends eating the six tastes every day, just not all day, but even at one meal, even just once a day, having the taste of bitter, the taste of astringent, which I'll get to in a moment. Because as these little imbalances are arising, this taste has an immediate effect physiologically on your body. Through your tongue, has an immediate effect, either heating or cooling, and then it has a long-term effect on what it does to your body, mind, and spirit. So incorporating these six tastes little by little throughout your daily life just makes a big difference. And then when you sit down and you ask, okay, how do I feel? What do I need? The bigger issues are what are going to be in your awareness. And the tastes that balance those bigger issues are more of what you need in that moment. So that's where you emphasize usually three tastes out of the six at any given meal, are the ones that you're really needing to balance like long term. So just to give you a personal example in hopes that it lands for you, makes sense, is I'm Vata Kapha. On my birth pulse, I have very low fire, and that means my tendency is to be very cold, very damp, and very low fire. So I all day am thinking about how to build my fire up. Although I'm also not. Sorry, I got a text message and it distracted me. I I'm also aware of when I have enough heat, right? And then I'm like, okay, I don't need so much of like pungent spices because that's what's going to increase fire in your body and mine. Um, but because I am a dosha, which vata is balanced by sweet, sour, salty, kapha is balanced by bitter, pungent, astringent, I've got to think about the six tastes kind of every day and every meal simply because that's my core constitution. And then there's whatever my present imbalance is that I'm always trying to, take care of. Like for last night, I had a very long day. I just met with so many different people yesterday. I think I had like 10 sessions, not all Ayurvedic consultations, but three of them were, and lots of meetings and phone calls. And at the end of the day, I totally needed grounding. So I had, almond milk with, I reconstituted some mango. I was really in the sweet taste last night, but this morning that's not what I feel like I need. So moving on. Okay, I hope this is all making sense. Give me some likes and some hearts if it is. And certainly you can, if you want to comment below this video, I will answer any questions that are coming up for you, after it's live. So the next taste is bitter. Now, bitter is born from air and ether, so it is the same dosha as vata. So it's going to be very cold, very light, very dry. It's amazing, an amazing taste for balancing pitta and kapha. Too much heat, too much mucus. It's one of the most powerful tastes to incorporate into your diet when you're thinking about like lung health, especially if you've got a lot of congestion or bronchitis in your lungs, or you've got a tendency towards that. The bitter taste is really going to help clear that out. So think about like steamed dark leafy greens as an example of bitter, or aloe vera juice. However, it bitter really makes you cold. So if you do too much bitter, it can kind of go the opposite direction and kind of point you towards a little bit more like grief or sadness or depression, because you've just kind of stripped away too much. So think about that with bitter. Now, bitter is a wonderful taste for vata. Vata just needs to be really careful about how they eat bitter. So for example, back to the dark leafy greens, I wouldn't have a vata person eat them raw most of the time, unless it was the middle of summer, the middle of the day. That's really what they were craving, like a really good marinated kale salad. But steamed dark leafy greens, where you add a little bit of salt and sour to them, there you go. Now you've got a great bitter taste for vata that's very appropriate for that dosha. And then the next taste is pungent, which is air and fire. So it's very hot and dry. This is the one taste that really only belongs to kapha, because kapha being so thick, heavy, wet, dense, the pungent taste is like dynamite for the kapha dosha. It breaks up dried earth. It gets things moving. It just sort of has this explosive effect that for vata would be too dry, and for pitta would be too hot. Now, that being said, most vata people run cold, and so they use a lot of the pungent spices, but they need to balance that with plenty of fats and whole grains and, all the wet, warm aspects from the sweet taste, so that that pungent flavor doesn't burn or doesn't dry them out. Okay, and then the final taste is astringent. Astringent is also very, very dry. It's more dry than cold, so bitter's more cooling. Astringent is more drying, but it also imbalances vata, because it is vata, right? Air and ether is the vata dosha as well, those elements. But you use astringent taste to pull excess fluid out of the body. So it's awesome for kapha, who naturally holds a lot of excess moisture, wetness, mucus, yeast, whatever. It can also be really great for pitta, who tends to be a really wet, oily, kind of gunky, smelly pitta type. Astringent taste is really powerful. So if you think of a food that makes you, when we do have something that's sour, it'll make you be like, it makes you make a face like it was sour. Astringent makes you make a face as well, but it's sort of like it pulls moisture out of your gums and out of your mouth. So it's kind of like, that was astringent. So think like a not quite ripe persimmon, or an unripe banana, a pomegranate, or a grape, or wine. It's really apparent with wine of like, oh, it really has quite a drying effect on the tissue of the mouth. So anyway, I've gone too long. I always try to make these 10 minutes and then I double it. But I hope that this was helpful. It's just been, I swear, I've had like 3 different people ask me about this just this week. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to make a video about it. So there you go. The 6 Tastes of Ayurveda, how the elements that they're born from, how that relates to the doshas, which are also born of the elements. I hope that this helps you. I hope this helps you sit down to every meal and really think about your food a little bit differently, especially as it adheres to the 6 tastes. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.